There is so much attention on TikTok right now. You know, the Chinese connected threat that TikTok apparently has on national security. But that doesn't mean that all other social platforms or networks or online dominating companies are all good. Like they don't have any influence on elections, maybe trying to skew things a tad when it comes to our elections in the United States. Well, take Google, for example. The Media Research Center has uncovered, they say, evidence that suggests that Google has skewed search results and manipulated information to favor left-leaning candidates in major U.S. elections. And that has been going on for a very long time, like since 2008. And I covered that election pretty closely between John McCain and Barack Obama. But we didn't understand back then the real power of, companies like Google. We knew they're big, but could they do all that we know they can do now? We didn't know that. But apparently it was all there. It was a real challenge to the integrity of the democratic process. And to be fair, Google denies all of this. They insist they have unbiased operations. They're totally objective, is what they say. But then there's this pattern of interference, which was outlined by the Media Research Center. Well, let's look into it. Roshini Rajkumar joins us again, political strategist and attorney and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Hi, Roshini. How are you?
Hello, Tom. These are some pretty damning accusations by the MRC. I mean, it's really stunning when you look at what they've laid out here.
Would you consider this a crisis if you were in Google's shoes?
Absolutely, it's a crisis because anytime, if you hold yourself out as a subjective search engine, anytime that very objectivity is being questioned and, these kinds of very damaging accusations, it's a crisis. I mean, they've got to be working overtime behind the scenes there to turn this around for them.
Well, the accusation is that they've been working overtime over many, many years to try to shift the opinions of millions of Americans. What does the accusation say by the MRC that somehow the Google's search algorithm has shifted millions of votes somehow in these recent elections?
Yeah, that seems to be the dots that MRC is trying to have, the readers or viewers of their investigation connect, that if certain kinds of things you plugged into the search lines and the contact forms, whatever it was, if certain names were included, it would go one way. If other names were included, it would go another way. And they seem to say that it's left-leaning, only the left-leaning names from any party were getting the preferable search results, or at least even the questions that you searched being answered by the search engine. So that really, if that is all true, that is very scary, first of all, that algorithms are set up that way. And right now, as there's so much talk about the AI and what technology and some of that, those computations and those algorithms can do, if this really was happening since '08, that's pretty scary to think about.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not totally surprised. I guess this just gives credence to people who feel like they've been unobjective for many years. But I mean, I can go on Google and in their search engine, I can put in a phrase, and I know which news outlets I'm going to get the perspective from. And if I go to DuckDuckGo, for example, I'll get different results many times. And I've tested this out on my own. So now the MRC comes out with this, I guess it gives that argument more credence, apparently. But is there anything that's illegal about this? Like, can they just say, listen, yeah, we do favor left-leaning candidates more than right-leaning candidates, and that's the way we're going to continue operating our business?
Well, it's interesting because at least, and maybe you've seen some things I haven't seen them actually try to defend this, right, in that kind of very transparent way. Yep, this is what we do. We're a private organization. This is what we do. I think they're really still trying to hold themselves out as objective and not favoring, and that's really where you get in trouble. But if they were to come right out and say, yep, this is what we do, we favor the left-leaning, then they're going to lose a lot of credibility with the millions and millions of users that use Google, and it is definitely the most popular search engine.
Yeah, there's no question about it. It's like, what Kleenex is to tissue, Google is to search engines, right?
So it's kind of become a verb.
Yeah,
right?
It has. It absolutely has. And so, but the issue comes maybe potential suppression of some information, which would be critical to certain political figures. So let's say in our current climate, if you want to research something about, let's say, Donald Trump, if this is all true, most of the information might be negative towards him. And if you search something for Joe Biden, it might be more positive. That's kind of the thinking behind this. Do we have evidence that that is in fact the case?
Well, and that's sort of where, if there were going to be any kind of further investigation by law enforcement, I mean, this is the thing. I talked to you about a month ago with the Texas and Florida cases and some of the social media that those states are trying to say these particular platforms did, and were favoring one candidate over another or one party over another. This is kind of in that same family of stories where these behemoth technology and search engines and these corporations that so sway political opinion or public opinion in the United States and elsewhere are gaining all this power and have the power to, as this report is saying, slant elections. Well, then we do have to dig in and see, is there a law being broken? It doesn't seem right, just kind of doesn't pass the smell test, but are there actual laws being broken? And that's really what Google needs to be looking into and worrying about if any prosecuting authority were to come after them about it.
And I wonder if maybe somebody can come up with, say, hey, this is a campaign finance violation because you're clearly favoring certain political candidates, and that's in fact an in-kind donation. Maybe they can go that route. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. You are. But they're certainly going to be facing scrutiny over this if this really gets out. I'm sure if you Google it, you might not be able to find the information on this, which is more evidence that maybe they're not objective.
Go to a different search engine to get the real news. And it just continues to perpetuate the stories, Tom, that there isn't any real, true, factual news out there anymore, which has been. That really is such a mark on all of us, because the free press is something that the United States has been built on. And that's what would really be a sad thing, because really when you're searching articles that various outlets, news outlets and others, are putting out there, and Google and other search engines pick up and give you and feed up to you, right? So no one's really doing original research anymore. They are relying on these search engines to feed them up the information, and that isn't always the full picture.
100%. We were just talking, Mike Parsons and I, our producer, our engineer today, and we were talking about what life used to be like with Encyclopedia Britannica. We had to go research through and go to the library, and it was much more difficult to, skew a perspective, because those things are published maybe yearly or whatever, every couple of years. This is like overnight stuff. Information changes on a dime, and it is very difficult. It's a very sad state we find ourselves in, because you can't trust most things, and you have to do a lot. It seems like it would be easier because the technology is at our fingertips, but you have to do a lot more research to try to find some semblance of truth, compare data, compare stories, that kind of situation. Do you think that there is going to be legislation that is introduced to maybe better regulate there should be more legal, maybe regulatory reforms that are going to be necessary to prevent maybe some undue influence by tech companies and maybe politicians within those tech companies?
Well, that's a really great question. Part of legislation getting introduced is reliant upon those legislators really understanding all of this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if our current Congress, the United States Congress, has all the savvy on it to really understand in great detail what the algorithms can do,
right.
What they're trying to prevent, what they're feeding up.
And not only that, if Google helped get them elected, they might be less likely to go after them.
Exactly.
We got to run here, Roshini, but I so appreciate your time. Roshini Rajkumar, of course, host of the Crisis Files podcast. Thanks so much.